Hey everyone, it's Apex, and today we're going to be doing a tier list on the 2v2 metagame in just Season 5, because I think that season is the most unique out of all of them. I think maybe Season 6, 7, and 8, they're a lot more similar, but S5 is unique for a few reasons that might not seem super obvious, because one, people don't really have any gear, and then also they don't really know what they're doing. They don't really know what's the best, so if people aren't running the best comp, then that won't really oppress some of the really bad comps. So that's why you might see a lot more variety, which I think is a good thing. And also this video might be really long, so I might split into two parts. We'll see how much I have to say, so let's get into it. Okay, so starting off with the first comp, we have Arcane Mage Sub-Rogue. Now this comp actually, specifically Arcane Mages, were a lot better back in the original Season 5. However, that was with a totally different balance patch. We're going back to Wrath with the final balance, and this comp is nowhere near as strong. So I would probably be putting it in viable only because rogues in general in the first season are a lot better than every other season. So I think otherwise I would be putting them here if this was later seasons, but I mean this comp still can do well, and Rogue Mage still has some synergy, but I just don't think it's that great. And then we have Dis Warrior. This comp is very strong later. I would say this is the second best warrior comp in 2s. However, at the beginning it doesn't seem as strong. I think mainly just because warriors don't have that crazy damage, and their synergy isn't as strong as it is with the infamous Hpal. So I still think it's really good though. I'll probably put it at the top of good or maybe low great, but I think just for this season I'll do low good. I have Arms Warrior, Unholy DK. I think this comp is quite bad. I would say it's probably low viable at best, but I would just put it in meh because I just don't think it's very good. Also, one thing to keep in mind, any Ret or Preg will be interchangeable in this list because they're pretty much the same spec, same gear. So Warrior Preg will be going in probably low viable. I do think it's a little better than the Warrior Unholy DK, but not by a lot. I would put it on the lower end though. I'd probably keep Sub Rogue and Arcane Mage above it. Now we have Arms Warrior Resto Shaman. Not the greatest, but it's still viable, so we'll put it there. And then we have Enhance Warrior. Enhance is actually quite strong in the first season in 2s. It can run a few things, but Enhance Warrior is not the greatest. You could maybe put it low viable, but I think I would probably end up putting it high meh because it just doesn't do very well. It loses to a lot of healer teams. Pretty much any Holy Pie team it auto loses to, and it can struggle versus a lot of things. Like you could, for instance, fight some sort of Affliction lock comp, like Affliction lock Resto Shaman or Affliction lock Resto Druid, and you might be able to get a lot of pressure going, and you might even kill the Resto Druid possibly, or Resto Shaman. However, you'll probably still die to the dots because you just don't have enough survival, and a Affliction locks dots with Lust is pretty scary. And now we have Arms Warrior Resto Druid. This one is basically like Resto Shaman. I would say it's probably slightly better, slightly worse. It's kind of hard to tell. I would actually put Resto Shaman or Resto Druid a little higher because I think it's slightly stronger in early Wrath. And now we have Assassination Rogue Shadow Priest. This one's not bad. Sub Rogue is the better variant. You can do well with it though, so I would be putting it probably in good. I could even maybe put it in low great, but you can certainly do well with this. I have Double Combat Rogue. I have never seen this in Arena. I can imagine it working really well for some comps or if they don't know it's coming, but rogues are so squishy in general, and if they're combat with no support, and then they don't have as much CC because they don't have dance and other things, I think this one would be pretty bad. But Double Combat Rogue, you could probably one-shot people, so I will probably put it in viable because I'm sure you could make it work. Then we have Combat Enhance. Now, I actually do think Sub Rogue Enhance is quite strong. The Combat Rogue variant probably is a little more gimmicky and has maybe some easier wins, however some much harder wins. So I'll probably be putting it in viable, but I would put it a little higher than the Double Combat. I have Combat Shadow. This one, nowhere near as strong as the Assassination Shadow. I think it's the worst of the rogue specs for the Shadow Priest because you end up playing somewhat, not a long game, but you play a longer game than the way combat typically plays. So I would probably be putting it high viable. I could maybe do low good, but I think I'll do high viable. It could maybe go in low good, but I don't think so. I have Disaffliction. They have pretty poor synergy, however you can still beat a lot of things. So I will put this one in good, but I will put it on the lower end. Now we have Holy Belly Warrior. This comp is insane through all of Wrath, and warriors get better pretty much every season. And even though it's the first season where they don't have the crazy gear, they don't have tons of armor, pin, and crit, and whatnot, which gives them a lot of rage regeneration, it's still very good. And then we have Disc Destro. This one doesn't have as much synergy as well, but it's still decent, and I'd probably be putting it on the high viable. And we have Frosty Kate Disc Priest. This one's definitely not bad. Most people typically run Unholy and they don't know anything about Frost, but this spec is good. This comp can do well, and I'd probably put it on high good. And now we have Disc Unholy DK. Now this one's very strong. It actually gets stronger throughout Wrath, but I would put this one in great for the first season. I have Disc Feral. This one is good for all of Wrath. This one's very strong, and if the Feral can raid and get lots of PvE gear, which doesn't matter as much early, this comp's extremely strong. It's honestly like the best 2s comp for Disc for the entire expansion. If you have a Feral, or you don't know what you guys are going to play, or you're open, I would just play Feral Disc, if that's what you want to do. And I'll be putting this one in the lower end of top tier. And now we have Disc Fire Mage. Now I do think all mages in general get stronger throughout Wrath as they naturally get more haste from their gear, and I think having the faster passive haste allows you to get things like polymorphs off before things like a Disc Priest or Shadow Priest can Shadow or Death, because you start casting your polymorphs like a split second after they do a global, and you'll be able to get your polymorph off before they can react with the death. So I think that's important, and that also applies to things like Hand of Sacrifice and Divine Sacrifice from Paladin. So I think for that reason, mages aren't as strong in the first season, but that's really just kind of the first season. So we'll be putting the Disc Fire Mage probably around here. And then I think for the Disc Frost Mage, it's certainly stronger, can do a lot better for a lot of things. However, it doesn't seem as strong at the beginning, and I would be putting it below the Affliction Disc, surprisingly. That's because Affliction and Frost Mage sort of do the inverse. Affliction kind of doesn't get worse, but it's definitely stronger earlier than later. And the same applies to Frost Mages, just in reverse. Now we have Disc Marksman Hunter. I do think this one is a lot stronger later. However, it's still strong early, and I'll be putting it in great. I would be putting the Unholy DK a little higher, but they might be about the same, or possibly the Hunter version better. I'm a little torn on that one. We have Disc Ellie. This one I think is okay. You definitely do decent with it, so I'll be putting it into the viable section. I'll probably be putting it below the Warriors though, as Warrior Healer is still good. Then we have Disc Assassination. Now this one can do quite a bit of pressure with the Assassination Rogue. He can just be pumping out damage while the Priest is just throwing out spells, and you can actually be killing things you normally wouldn't be able to. So this comp actually is a little better than people would think, and I'll be putting it actually on the higher end of good. I have Disc Preg, and this is also Ret Paladin. They are one of the most annoying comps to kill in the game. You can't really get CC off on either of them. They're just super annoying. And then they have decent CC with just Mind Control, Fear, and their Hodge. So this comp is very good. I would probably be putting it on somewhere in good, probably right about there. I think it's pretty strong. It maybe deserves to be a little higher, but Preg has a lot of good options actually in the first season. So now we have Disc Prot Warrior. I think this one's very bad. I would hesitate to even say it's viable. I'd probably be putting it on low. Well, no, it can do decent with some QC going on as the burst is high, but then Prot doesn't have a lot of gear early. Yeah, this one's not good at all, actually. Probably put it way down here, actually. I have Disc Enhance. This one's not too bad. Not the greatest. Enhance doesn't really do well with healers in general. Just that's the case for all of Wrath, but I'll be putting it probably in viable, probably somewhere like right. I would probably, I'd put it behind Warrior Preg. I have Prot Paladin and Disc. This one's not bad. Prot Paladins with healers can work very well, and they have strong synergy with this, so this one's definitely not bad, and I would be putting it in good. I have Sub Disc. This one's definitely not bad. It's pretty high skill comp actually in general, and it can be fun. It has way less sustain than the Assassination version. However, you can get kills with your CC setups, and the Disc does very high damage. So, comp's not bad. Very high skill cap though, and I'll be putting it probably right about here. I think it's slightly better than the Assassination version, but both of them are definitely not bad. I have Ellie Destro. This one's certainly not bad, and I'd say Ellie in general is better in 2s in the first season than every other season. So I think this comp actually can be quite strong. I hesitate to put it in great, but it might go in great. I don't know. I probably high good or low great. And then we got Ellie Ret or Ellie Preg. This one surprisingly actually might kind of work with Preg because you get a lot of healing going with the Ellie, and this one, I don't think this really works later in Wrath, but it seems to work possibly early, and this one's not bad, so look out for this one. I have LEDK. I think this one's awful. I would be putting this one pretty much at the lowest. And now we have Feral Hunter. A lot of you have asked me about this one. I really don't think it's very good at all. And I'd say it's probably viable, but barely. And then we have Feral Preg or Feral Ret. This one's a lot better. If you're gonna run a Feral, I think this is a lot better than the Hunter variant. And you can do decent with it. I would probably be putting it on, yeah, I'd put it low good. I have Feral DK. I think this one's pretty awful. It's probably a little better than some of these other ones though, but actually no, it's definitely better than some of these. Definitely better than Double Rogue. And I would say it's probably better than the Hunter variant too. So I would go there with that one. I'm gonna have Fire Mage Ellie. I think this one's pretty bad. I would not recommend playing it. I think Frost Mage Ellie works okay, but Poly and Hex shares DRs with each other, so that's just bad synergy. And I would probably put this, yeah, about there. Now Frost Mage Destro lock. I think this one's a lot stronger in BC than in Wrath. It's okay though, you can still wizard people down, but these two really need a healer. So I'll be putting it probably on the lower end of viable, probably a little higher than the Feral versions. Yeah, actually, I'd probably put it about here. Okay, now we have Frost Mage Boomchicken. I think this one's a little bit better than the Destro variant. This one has a lot more utility on a lot more maps. You can do better on half the maps, essentially. And depending on how they do Ring of Valor, if they have Ring of Valor where it goes up and down, then that's one more map that they could do really well on just because of the Boomchicken. So I'll be putting this one probably just right ahead of Frost Mage Destro. They're still similar. A lot less burst, but more survival utility. Okay, now we have Frost Mage Ret or Frost Mage Preg. I would recommend playing the Ret version. You want to have more burst, and the way this one typically plays is the Ret will just be running around with the shield and a one-hander on, just healing a lot, and then he'll throw on his two-hander, do a bunch of burst when they got some sort of CC window with probably a deep freeze or something, and then get through some cooldowns if it's like a Holy Pally team or something, and then rinse and repeat, and eventually try and get the KO. They have no MS, so they rely on the heavy burst, and they have decent survival. So this comp's actually not bad, and I'll be putting it probably on the higher end of, or the lower end of good. Now, Frostmage Shadow. Pretty much the best Shadow Priest and Frostmage, but definitely the Frostmage comp for all of Wrath. However, and this applies to all mages, I do think Frostmages in general in the first season just aren't as good. I don't know why, that's just how it feels. But still extremely strong comp, and I'll be putting it in the high end of great. I'm not going to put it in top tier though, as I don't think any mage comp should be in top tier. However, you could still get Glad, you can still get rank 1, blah blah blah, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of angry mages in chat from this, but I still think you're good. And then Frost Mage Ellie, a bit worse, but better than the Fire variant, as they share CC DRs with their Hex and Polymorph, which is a big bummer. Otherwise, I think they'd have a decent amount better synergy, but the Frost Mage is pretty squishy, and so is the Ellie, so they'll kind of be babysitting each other in a way, and then one of them will end up dying because of that. So not the greatest, but not the worst. I'll be putting it probably around these DKs. Yeah, I'd put it above the disc. Actually, I'd put it about there. I think it's not too bad. And then Frost Mage Sub Rogue. Now, this comp in BC is godly, absolutely amazing, but not in Wrath. However, rogues are very good first season, and I still think this one's not bad, so I'll be putting it in good. And then we have Holy Pally Affliction Lock. Affliction Lock feels like it does better with every other healer but Holy Pally, which is weird considering Holy Pallies are like the best healer for all of Wrath. So I think that's a little odd, but yeah, I would put them on the lower end of good, but still do well. And Holy Pally Assassination Rogue. I think this is a really bad comp. It can still win though, so I'm not gonna put it at the very bottom, but it's pretty bad. So actually, I will put it at the bottom. I have Holy Pally Destro Lock. It's a lot like Affliction, except you can get more setups to get kills, but it can struggle a lot with certain comps like DK Holy Pally or like Warrior Holy Pally, or even things like Dis Warrior or even Dis DK. So it's got some weird bad matchups that are really bad, but it can do decently well versus a lot of the things. So I'll be putting it a little higher than the Affliction, although actually no, for the first season Affliction is so strong. I would still put Affliction a little above it. Okay, now we have Holy Pally Ellie. Now this was a real surprise to me. I don't know if this just started coming up on the meta recently, but I never thought this comp was very good. However, I have seen a couple people high ranked in the ladder recently, so there probably is something to this. So I'll be putting this actually in the top tier. It's the only one I'm really not too sure of, besides like Double Combat Rogue. But This one might be a pleasant surprise for myself because I will be playing a lot of Ellie, and my main partner will be playing Holy Pie this time around. So this could be really exciting, but we'll see. We'll see. I have Holy Pally Frost Decay. Very good. Holy variant is better though, so keep that in mind, but I'll be putting it definitely in great. I'll put it on the lower end though. I have Holy Pally Prot Warrior. The Dis variant I think is better because you just have more pressure, and with the Prot Warrior you're not going to do as well versus a lot of things, and if you're running a lot of PvE gear, you have no Resil, so you die to wizards, and you have no MS, so that sucks. So I'll be putting them down there. Actually, yep. Yeah, put them down there. I have Holy Pally Unholy. This is very strong. I think this is definitely one of the best comps in the game, and I'll be putting it very high. I'll be putting it below Holy Pally Arms Warrior though, because that comp is still very strong, but I do think Holy Pally Warrior, if I do keep it at the top of this list, it's not the top by a lot, because in the rest of Wrath, all the other seasons, and probably even the end of S5 sort of, I do think Arms Warrior Holy Pally is the best by a good margin, other than Shadow Frost, which becomes better later. And now I have Enhancement BM Hunter. Now this one is good in 3s, and it's not very good typically in 2s. However, the first season BM has really bad scaling, but at the very beginning it's quite strong, so this comp can do very well, and I will be putting it at the top of great. And now we have Enhanced Preg. This comp is extremely strong. You can even play it as Ret, however I do think the Preg version is a lot better. They sort of play an attrition style where they're basically just attacking, the Shaman's purging constantly, the Pally's healing and dispelling constantly, and they are going with their CC setups, which is Hajj every 40 seconds, Repent every minute, and Hex every 45 seconds, and they get all three of those lined up every minute, and they have it on an instant cast, so they can just do that, get cooldowns, do it again in a minute, live till then, do it again, maybe get the rest of the cooldowns, and do it again. So like 2 minutes in the match, they have their third CC chain lined up, all instant casts, and then they can just pop wings, maybe they haven't lusted yet, and just kill you. So an amazing comp. A lot of nobody played this back in the original Wrath, and now I think it's going to be one of the best comps for sure. So I'll be putting this pretty much at the very top. I have Enhanced DK. This one's a lot worse later in Wrath when everyone else gets more damage and whatnot. However, it's still good, and in the first season I think it's the best that this comp will be, and I'll be putting it on the higher end of good actually. And now we have Preg Marksman. Now I think the Ret version is better later with it. They're kind of similar. Or they're almost even equal as well. I would say the Ret version is probably better later, but the Preg version feels a little stronger earlier. So I would recommend playing this as Preg for the first season, but this comp is very good, and I'll be putting it at the top. Now we have Unholy DK Marksman Hunter. This comp does very well in 3s when it has a healer to back it up, but in 2s, it's just not that good. So it'll go really low viable. I put it below the Feral Hunter as well, so pretty much the bottom of viable. Now I have Boomchicken Destro. I think this one's a little better than the Mage Boomchicken, so I'll put it a little higher, but it's not amazing. And I'll probably be putting it a little higher than some of these, so probably about there, but still below the Warriors. Then we have Boomchicken Ellie. This one's called Godcleave in 3s. I think this one's not bad. If you get the right map, this comp's actually very good. If you get Blade's Edge, Ring of Valor, assuming that the pillars go up and down, you can just knock people off over and over and over, and on sewers. It's very good. I mean, it's like, if I put it on this list, half the maps it's going to be like viable, and then if you get the good maps, it's going to be like high good. So I'm just going to average it out and probably put it, you know, lower end of good, but it's not bad.